the person that I think the person that I have heard talk about this the best is Florence Scovel Shin, I believe. Because Florence Scovel Shin, she always tells you you're gonna get she first of all, she always tells you to like work on you, right? She tells you like work on yourself, right? And then she tells you to say affirmations like, I'm gonna get this or something better under grace in a perfect way. Meaning that I'm gonna get this in a way that's gonna be perfect for me. If I'm supposed to get this guy over here, then I'm gonna get this guy. If I'm supposed to get this woman over here, then I'm gonna get this woman. And if I don't, I'm gonna get something better. And it's gonna be under grace and it's gonna be in a perfect way. I think Florence Scovel Shin, she really hits the nail on the head with that when she talks about that and manifesting a specific person. Because there was a couple examples in her book where a woman comes to her and she's like, oh, I want this guy, I want this guy. And Florence is basically like, why do you want this guy? Like, do you think this guy is really it? Do you really think you want this specific person? Obviously, she didn't say that specific person at the time because this is early 1900s or whatever it was, you know what I'm saying? But she's like, do you really want this guy? Like, you may not want him. And then, sure enough, as time went on, the lady was like, you know what? Such and such doesn't seem so interesting to me like he used to. You know what I mean? And I think what happens when people focus on themselves, like this is the real way, in my opinion, to get a specific person. This is like the real way to get any specific person back that you want to get. It's to focus on you. When you focus on you and your self-love and your self-concept gets to a level, like you become a magnet. You will literally become a magnet to so many great things. And from there, your person is just going to match that. Whoever you're supposed to be with, naturally, they're just going to come. And whoever's not supposed to be in your life is going to naturally fade away. This is what happens when people do the work on themselves. And but again, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. This goes back to you have to be aware. You have to be paying attention. You can't be moving through life like a zombie. Mm-hmm. You can't be oblivious. You have to pay attention to the signs, the birds before lands, the birds of incidents. One of the symptoms when you start to elevate and you do the work on yourself, one of the symptoms when you start to love yourself, one of the symptoms is people will naturally fade from your life and then people will naturally come into your life. That's one of the big symptoms that people miss out on when they're doing this work and becoming a better person and elevating. You know what I mean? And people don't realize that. People always say, oh, how can I get rid of this person? Or how can I attract such and such? When you do the work on yourself, that stuff naturally takes care of itself. You don't have to figure out how to get rid of this person over here. You don't have to figure out how to cut this friend off. You don't have to worry about any of that type of stuff. You don't have to worry about, oh, how can I get this person to come back? No, when you focus on yourself and your self-love, self-concept, that stuff takes care of itself. The people that need to come back into your life are going to come back. They're going to naturally hit you up, naturally apologize, naturally whatever. The people that are not supposed to be on your level, they're not supposed to be in your life, they're going to naturally fade away. It has no choice.
So if people, that sounds really amazing. And to just let the universe bring the people into your life that are supposed to be here, including potentially new people that you haven't even thought about yet. But why do you think, knowing this, why do you think so many people kind of reject that way and choose instead to try and manifest their old ex back or their old SP back or their old job back or, these things that aren't necessarily in alignment with their idea for making their life bigger and better if they're just, pulling back from the past?
Because I think because they don't believe in free will and because they believe that this world that we're in is a simulation. You hear that term thrown around so many times from different LOA content creators. I've heard it in the past. I don't really hear it anymore because I don't really watch a lot of creators anymore. Mm-hmm. But you hear people say things like, we live in a simulation. This life that we live in is not real. And then people start to believe that and they're like, oh, wait, you know what? This isn't real. Oh, this is a game. You know what I mean? But again, to a certain extent, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like we hear these theories and we hear these I don't know, people give these soliloquies and they just spew out stuff. And I don't think some of the viewers really understand, like, you gotta use your common sense and understand, like, yes, we do live in a simulation, or yes, this is a game, or yes, you can control your reality, or to a certain extent. At some point, you have to realize, like, okay, there are certain things that I cannot control. I cannot control certain things. You know what I'm saying? And this is why I think people, like you said, like you just mentioned, this is why they try so hard to get an ex back, because they believe they can because they don't believe that anybody has free will in their reality. They believe that whatever they want in their reality is going. But at the same time, so many things have happened to so many people that they probably didn't want to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had free will, then why did those things happen? You could have controlled it. You should have controlled it, but you didn't, right? And even after people learn about LOA, they still don't control these things. They still can't control. Like people control. Like they'll realize, like, okay, I have to control the words that I say, the feelings that I feel. But how come I wake up tomorrow and I have a flat tire? Or how come somebody stole money out of my bank account? You know what I mean? How come, like, people think like these bad things won't happen to them because of this whole free will talk. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, and I also, you know, after talking with you for a long time on this topic, to me, it also seems like people lack imagination. You know, they can't envision something for themselves, for their future, that's better than what they have right now or different than what they have in the past, you know? So when they're trying to think about, oh, I want a SP who loves me the way I deserve to be, you know, in the best possible way, they have no imagination to pull something more brilliant from the universe or from the simulation that they, you know, believe in or any of these things. And, you know, so kind of their brain just defaults back to like, oh, yeah, well, this person from your past is easy for our brain to come up with an image of and to attach a personality to, and we can create this whole story in our brain. That is almost no work for us. Whereas if you're starting from scratch or trying to tap into your subconscious and your heart and what you really want, it's more work that you have to put into create something new for yourself.
That's a very great point. You just made me think of something. I never thought of that. I think that's a great point. And people being, I guess, if you want to say lazy manifestors, lazy imaginers, like people, like you said, people don't want to brainstorm. People don't want to. But we've also talked about this too, like how draining it is to think.
Yeah. And how nerve-wracking it is to ask the universe for things that you're not confident that you might get or that you don't know if you deserve. Right,
100%. I think that's a great point. And it is easier a lot of times to stick, like you say, like the term goes, stick to the devil you know and not the devil you don't know. Right? I don't know if you've heard that term before, but I've heard, and I might have butchered that just now. I don't know if I said it the right way, but basically it's like you stick to what you know. And so most people, they stick to what they know because they are afraid of the unknown, like you said, or they don't want to think about the unknown. They don't want to take that energy to try to think or construct a new vision for their life, a new relationship for their life, because I know this person, all I know is this job. And this is the reason why a lot of people that get older, this is why a lot of people that are older have a hard time starting businesses or starting to do whatever they want to do, is because you've been doing something for 10, 15, 20 years. All of a sudden, somebody's telling you, or you're trying to convince yourself, hey, stop. I don't want to do this no more. I want to, or not even that, just retired people. You look at how retired people behave and act after they've been working for so long, and then they stop working, and it's like, man, like, I'm not working no more. What am I going to do? You know what I mean? And we've kind of talked about that. Like, when you retire, when you stop working your brain, you die, essentially. You know what I mean? It's a story about Trump. You know what I mean? I know a lot of people don't like Trump out there, but I remember hearing Trump tell a story, and he was talking about one of his guys in finance that he knew, a banker or whatever. He was talking about how the banker had gotten so old. He had gotten so old very quickly after he stopped working. He was like, yo, Donald told him, was like, yo, when you stop working, he was like, don't stop working. He's like, when you stop working, all of these people that were calling you, etc., they're not going to be calling you no more. They're not your friends the way you think they're your friends. He's like, when you retire, you're gonna realize how lonely you're gonna be and blah blah blah. You know what I mean? And so this guy went ahead and retired, and Donald was right. Like, this dude nobody called him, you know, and within a year, Trump was saying he got so old in a year. And it's the same concept. Like, when you stop, you die. When you stop thinking, when you stop working, when you're not utilizing your brain, you know, this is what happens. And it's the same thing with imagination, which is why it's important for us, to your point, to not be lazy with this manifestation stuff, to not be afraid to maybe think of a new scene, maybe think of a new life, maybe think of a new specific person, not to be afraid to imagine yourself with somebody better than, because there's billions of people on earth, you know what I mean? And I know some people are afraid to hear that, but the truth is there are billions of people on earth. Yes, you could probably, to a certain extent, help recreate the person that you're with. If you want to go that route, hey, go for it. That's probably going to take a lot more energy than it would be to think of somebody new. But instead of trying to recreate your specific person from that aspect, what I would probably do is I would probably just imagine yourself feeling loved on the highest level. feeling loved and cherished on the highest level. And then whoever that man or woman is that's supposed to give you that feeling will naturally just show up when you feel that feeling of love.
I like hearing you say that because I think I speak for probably many people when I say that when I try and do visualizations or affirmations, a lot of times I get caught up in the detail work of it.
Yeah.
And trying to picture, okay, my dream person is going to look like this, or say things like this, or my dream job is going to be in this field.
Right.
And you kind of lose the really important piece of the visualization, which is what you just mentioned of that feeling of being loved, or the feeling of being accomplished and respected in your place of work, or feeling content with your life, the way that you're living it. I mean, it's amazing how easy it is to overlook that feeling when when your eyes and your senses and your brain are so used to creating a story around that. And I think a little bit to what we were talking about earlier, sometimes it can put some blinders on so that you aren't able to see the bridge of incidents or the birds before land when they show up in your life, because you're trying to visualize these details that aren't necessarily a part of the big story of what you want to manifest for yourself. You know, it doesn't matter if your SP has blonde hair or is a brunette,
Right.
Doesn't matter if your job is 10 minutes from home or 30, those things I think really trip a lot of people up.
I agree.
Keep them from the full spectrum of what they could imagine.
Yeah.
If you imagine from your feelings instead of from from your brain.
And you know what feeling a lot of people run from, but they should be running towards when they do their visualizations? A lot of people, like you said, they get caught up in the scenes, but a lot of people don't necessarily get a certain feeling from scenes that they create, right? But the one feeling that people should be reaching for is relief.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people, when they're trying to manifest a specific person, they're so focused on thinking about the feeling of love. But what we got to realize and understand is love is fleeting. Those emotions come and go. Like most people are not always going to feel that feeling of love when they're with somebody. You know what I mean? But just because you don't feel that feeling 24/7 doesn't mean that the love is gone. Doesn't mean like, oh, there's nothing there. There's no spark anymore. And this is something that a lot of people don't realize. It's like, oh, I don't feel that feeling that I had a year ago or 2 years ago. It's like that feeling is going to go. Most people aren't going to keep that feeling up for 20 years straight or 30 years straight. Like
almost like talk about the honeymoon phase of a relationship.
Yeah, infatuation. Like you're not going to have that feeling for 30. Like there might be some couples out there, what we call the term 1 in a million, that can maintain that infatuation stage for 30 years or 50 years. You see those old people like, oh, I just love him like it was yesterday. We're still in love like we just met yesterday. Nothing's changed. And they're literally still doing stuff as if it was the first time they ever met. Like those, don't get me wrong, those stories are beautiful. But realistically, how many couples do you think are like that? Not a lot. You know what I mean? That can have that type of feeling or whatever. But instead of thinking about that type of feeling and love, I think what we should reach for is, I think when people do their visualizations, whether you're visualizing dream job, money, relationship, whatever, you should reach for the feeling of relief. Because think about how you would feel if you had your specific person right now. Think about how you would feel if you had financial freedom, if you had passive income. You would feel relief. What does relief feel like to you? That's the feeling when you visualize and you do your sats, your state akin to sleep at night, or you do your affirmations. Think about feeling relief. When I do visualizations and I think about things myself, I don't necessarily think about a number like, oh, I got $200 million. I don't go for that thought, or I don't go for that affirmation. I go for the relief of, oh, it feels so good to not worry about bills. It feels so good. The relief of knowing that I can buy whatever, or I can buy, you know what I mean? Not putting a name on it, but just go for that feeling of relief.